There's a real problem right now with conservative leaders in the English-speaking West, if you can call them conservative, that is. First, Donald Trump, more a right-wing populist, I guess, than conservative. He crashed and burned. And he did that by ticking off too many people with his rudeness, his insults, his lies, and simply by not being presidential. And then Scott Morrison, he also lost his election, too much bluster, also a bit of a populist. And I think he didn't win the love of his friends or the respect of his enemies, but he just ticked off even conservatives by tacking too far to the left. Where was the leadership? And now Boris Johnson, another populist, not really conservative, he's been forced by his own MPs to quit as Prime Minister for being a liar and for being undisciplined and for being all over the shop politically. And I reckon a lot of Conservatives are screaming out for an authentic Conservative leader. Yeah, we don't need a firebrand. We just need someone of principle and quiet purpose. A Margaret Thatcher or a Ronald Reagan. But where are they? And what exactly is the problem? Why don't we get them? Well, Damien Freeman has written about this leadership problem for the Centre for Independent Studies, is also a principal policy advisor of the Australian Catholic University's think tank, and he joins me now. Damien Freeman, great to see you. What do you see as the problem here?
Andrew, I agree with the way you've introduced this and the problem with the leaders in the English-speaking world. You might have read yesterday in The Australian, Paul Kelly had a piece about Boris Johnson with the headline, "Johnson symbolises conservative crisis." And in trying to get to terms with the problems of Johnson, Paul Kelly asks the question, is the practical conservatism enunciated by Edmund Burke, his espousal of some change but rejection of revolutionary change, consigned to the dustbin? And I think that goes to the heart of it, because Paul Kelly there is getting to what we traditionally thought of as conservative leadership and the dearth of conservative leadership. And I think it really goes back to these basic ideas that Edmund Burke was about. Edmund Burke, as you know, famously wrote a critique of the French Revolution, his reflections on the revolution in France. And the point about this is he isn't against change. He understands that change is important. He criticised the kind of change that the revolutionaries were about. And he says what we need is gradual change, evolutionary change, change that is built on our existing way of life, that you take the ways in which we live, and that serves as the basis for change. And the problem, he says, with revolutionaries is they are enamoured of abstract ideas. And he says abstract ideas are never a good way to go about change. Change, he says, should be change that is continuous with tradition. And I think this is right, and it's right for a number of reasons.
Look, it's true. Now, we're talking about a guy that's writing 250 years ago. That book you mentioned is fantastic because he was able to predict exactly what was going to happen with the French Revolution. It was going to be you destroy, the social bonds. That's easy. That's what our revolutionaries want to do. Destroy everything. Very easy. Thing is, things then fall apart, right? And then he said, you're going to get, in France, you're going to get terror and you're going to get a dictatorship. Exactly that happened. Napoleon comes riding in. Exactly. Now, what I don't see here is conservatives that actually like what there is at the moment and then think, well, what is the change that will actually maintain that? Because you can't just stay frozen. That's reactionary. Conservative change. But the Conservatives now, so-called, they're as revolutionary as some of these guys in France. And I've got to say, you seem to be supporting this. They say, let's have, for instance, let's change our constitution to recognise an Aboriginal-only parliament, injecting a new racism into this country. I don't think that's conservative at all. And I want the conservative leaders that can stand up to this kind of thing. Where are they?
Andrew, I certainly haven't advocated any sort of new parliament. I've continuously said that if we're going to have change, we need to have change in conformity with tradition. But I think the important thing here is to see we need to be ahead of the game. We need to be looking at what's on the horizon. We need to be saying, what are the policy challenges and what are the modest ways of addressing them, the reasonable ways of addressing them? Because if we don't be surprised if sensible, reasonable people aren't prepared to put forward proportionate, moderate, reasonable responses to problems, then don't be surprised if people take the only response on offer, an extreme response, a response that goes too far. Well, and that I think is the other side of this for Conservatives is you have to be prepared to find solutions, to engage with problems, and to say what's the moderate way Damien, of dealing with it.
I agree with you. Look, you say we got to sit there and we got to find out what the problems are. I tell you what, the problems are screaming at us, and what I think we're lacking are politicians, Conservatives, with the courage of their convictions and the guts to fight. I mean, you have a look. We've got now identity politics. Where are the Conservative leaders attacking that? I see a few now in the Conservative leadership ballot in Britain. Good on them. I don't know that they're going to win. I suspect they won't, but good on them. You've got this identity politics. You've got this race politics. These are things that Conservatives should be rebelling against. And what I see is not just a lack of principle, it's a lack of guts.
Andrew, I agree with you about the need to address these things. I think the important thing for Conservatives is, as I said before, you've got to be ahead of the game, because in order to address this in a conservative way, in order to say what's a moderate, reasonable way of addressing a problem, you can't wait until the last minute. By then you advance what might once have seemed like a reasonable proposal, and it seems like it's too late in the day for that. It's a feature of being conservative. I think they've waited too late already.
Yeah, mate.
Well, this is the problem when you wait too late.
We're being drowned in race and identity politics. And we're looking for these Conservative leaders, and I agree with you. Where are they? I think if they started by reading Edmund Burke, I know it's 250 years almost old, the revolution in France, but boy, if they read that, they might be a little further ahead of the game than they are now, because we now have a dearth of leadership, and I think this is going to really, really cost us. I couldn't name anyone that's likely to be the next Liberal leader, maybe Peter Dutton, but I don't hear him saying anything, who could actually fight this